Welcome to the Dropship Podcast, where you'll learn how to build and grow a high-ticket dropshipping business and hear stories from successful e-commerce entrepreneurs. Let's kick this thing off. Hey, welcome back to the Dropship Podcast. John here with you today. And today is another student success story episode. It's me, no Ben today, but I am joined by another Ben, as fate would have it. Ben Brockman has joined us today, and Ben is a Dropship Breakthru student, and he's hitting some pretty awesome results in his high-ticket dropshipping business. He's been up and running for about 4 months, and he's already done over 200,000 in sales, including a 70,000 sales month. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome, dude. Awesome. So we'll come back to those results a little bit as we get through the show here, of course, but and sort of dig into about how that's gone, how it's looking, et cetera, et cetera. But you know, a lot of people listening to the show are thinking about starting a high-ticket dropshipping business. You know, they're listening to the show, maybe haven't quite jumped in yet. Where were you before you started dropshipping? What were you doing? Who is Ben? Where did you start?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, I graduated college, back in 2019. I got into a sales job for a while, a lot of outbound calling. Quit that right before the start of COVID. Joined another little startup company here in the Chicagoland suburbs and did a lot of marketing and, sales stuff for them at a lower level. And then, probably about a year ago, I found, the whole drop shipping space and started with low tickets, similar to a lot of people, seeing all these YouTube videos and TikToks of, I scaled this store to 5 million a year in 30 days, just like these crazy outlandish things. And it was really enticing. I'm like, oh, I want to try something like that. It doesn't seem too hard. This is the average Joe Schmo. So I think I could, hop on board with that. And then as I looked into it a little bit more, I kind of saw that, hey, you can have these amazing results, but a lot of people don't. It's, you're very much, riding the wave, trying to get the hot new item. And then that's kind of when I stumbled upon your guys' podcast in the high ticket scene. And it just, clicked a lot more for me. Hey, I can, put my resources and energy into building a business that is going to be an asset for me, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And something that you can ultimately sell too, while you're making profit along the way. So that's when I, started listening to your guys' podcast and, joined the program probably 6 months ago. And it's been great ever since. Amazing community and, just so much content to get through. So.
Yeah. Why did you want to start a business? Like, what was you saying? You're in sales, come out of college. What's the drive there? What got you to jump in, whether it was with low ticket or with high ticket or whatever? What was the driving force for you? Or what is the driving force for you?
No, good question. I'd really say the driving force for me is I love building stuff and I love, interacting with people. That's something I really enjoyed in the sales job, and even, in my last, startup position too. But on top of those two things, I would say just the freedom aspect, being able to work whenever you want to work. I'm a very, self-motivated, self-driven person. So when I do put the work in and I see the results coming, that's really what keeps pushing me to the next level. So, but yeah, the freedom part is huge. Being able, 5 years down the road, if you can have everything automated and be able to do whatever you want with your life, travel and still work on your business, that's really the goal for me.
Yeah. Awesome. And I think that's it's such a big motivator for a lot of people. Like a lot of people you hear, like you said, the TikTok guy who's like, 5 million in 30 days or whatever, which is completely unrealistic, But like a lot of people I find just the first thing they say is that freedom thing. It's not necessarily like I need to make, X amount of dollars. Like I have this money thing. It's just like I want to have some freedom. I want to have time freedom. I want to have location freedom, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, you need a certain amount of money to be able to do that, right? You got to pay the bills at a minimum and all of that sort of thing. But it always surprises me when I think about how few people say my main driver is money, which I think a lot of people from the outside of business expect that is the main driver.
Hmm. Yeah, I know a lot of, especially when you come from the sales world, that is a big thing where everyone's looking for, how can I make the most amount of money? For me and my values, it's really about, how can I make the most out of my life? How can I be the most content, the most happy all the time? And obviously money comes with that. But to your point, if I can have the freedom to do whatever I want, or, not be stressed out all the time, um, not have to worry about going into a corporate job 9 to 5. Obviously, that's a huge, huge driving factor too. Starting your own business and really trying to make it work yourself. So,
Yeah. Awesome. And so you mentioned, you listen to the podcast. Now you're on the podcast. How cool's that? That's great to have you
it's pretty
here.
surreal. Yeah, it's
I love
pretty
it when
insane.
we get like listeners on and we're like, yeah, these guys are on the podcast now. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
Um,
crazy.
but you mentioned you jumped into the program. Like when you were thinking about getting started and maybe just before you got started, was there any sort of like any sort of concerns or thoughts that were going around in your head that about whether it was about drop shipping or even high ticket drop shipping specifically that you kind of had to work through, or maybe something that was holding you back a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So I'd say, obviously you're always going to have that fear of failure. And especially when you're starting out. On top of that, obviously the cost, the upfront cost for the course, and how much you're gonna have to put in the beginning. That's definitely a big fear too. Um, I'm a pretty not risk averse, but I do like to take risks. So when I see something come up and I really believe in it, I'm happy to put the money where your mouth is, so to say. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely scary getting into it. You don't really know, what it's going to entail. You don't know, what type of support system you're going to have behind you once you do put that capital up front and start really working through it. Um, but yeah, I think, some things that you guys have mentioned multiple times is like, hey, you just have to start. Like that's the biggest thing. And then once you start, you just have to keep being consistent. And I think that's where, that really like struck a chord with me where I was like, hey, if I don't do this now, like you guys have mentioned, 2 years down the road, you're going to be looking at it and you're like, ah, shoot, like I really wish I just would have pulled the trigger on that and just got into it. So that was really what it came down to. But, I did wait 4 or 5 months after finding the podcast to really pull the trigger
Oh
on it.
yeah,
So it
sure.
wasn't an
Yeah,
initial
okay.
thing, but yeah,
Yeah,
it
nice.
just kept playing in the back of my head that, if I don't do this, I could be missing out on something great down the road. So,
Yeah, and so I just wanted to dig into something that you mentioned. You mentioned the word belief, and like you said, like I think obviously you got to a point where you had a level of belief that this could work for you. Um, how do you think you got to? How do you think that mindset came about for you? Like, what do you think contributed to that? Because I think that's something a lot of people struggle with when they're thinking about starting a business. It doesn't even need to be specifically high ticket dropshipping, but actually believing that they can do it or that it can work for them. Like obviously you always hear about other people who it might have worked for and all of that sort of
yeah.
thing, but translating that to your own circumstances and your own experience, I think that's something that holds a lot of people back, is that they believe that somebody else can do it, but they don't believe that they can do it. And so I was just curious, just because you mentioned that that was a part of, what got you moving ahead, at whether there was a point or just anything in particular that maybe you can put your finger on that sort of helped build that belief, within yourself.
Yeah. Um, it was somewhat a little bit easier for me maybe than other people because I did come from that, I do have like a background in business and marketing,
Mm,
and that's kind of a lot of what it takes to, not build a good store, but, maintain it and really be on top of it. But I think one of the main things is when you guys used to do, or I don't know if you still do them anymore, but when you have the Freedom Friday episodes or you bring other people on,
yep.
when I listened to their stories and I heard people, talking about it and, what their backgrounds were and, how they started, I was like, wow, like, that's really no different than me or anyone else in the
Mm,
course who's been doing really well. Um, so that was kind of where it switched a little bit for me. Like, hey, if this person can do it, how are they any different than me? And, what drive I have to do it? Because that's really what it comes down to. I mean, the course itself, there's so many, materials and guides and helpful people to, help along the way. It really comes down to like, hey, if you're going to do it, you kind of have to have that internal drive to really want to make it work. So that's when I,
mm,
thought, okay, hey, I do have that drive to, and who knows, it may work out, it may not, but at least I gave it a go. And, um, I'm no different than the other people that have done very successful things with the drop shipping model. So,
awesome. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Drawing on other people's experience is a big thing. So you dived into the program, joined up Dropship Breakthru, and, got your business up and running. What was your biggest challenge? Like before you launched, what was the big Ben? I think everybody has something that they find particularly challenging. Was there anything in there for you that kind of you were like, oh, I don't know about this, or kind of was a bit of a
yeah,
scary moment or something like that?
yeah, I mean, honestly, the a big hurdle which I've been seeing a lot of people in the Facebook group and stuff talk about is, the first one that I came across was the niche selection. So really, once you build out all your lists and your ideas, trying to pinpoint one down, that could be a daunting thing. And,
Mm,
when you start looking into it more, or if you don't, pull the trigger on it right away, it kind of gets in your head and you're like, oh, I don't know if this is the right one, or maybe I should have went with this other one. So yeah, that was a huge hurdle to overcome in the beginning. And in my mind, I, just said, hey, we're just going to pick one, and you kind of just have to run with it because you never know what's going to work out. Um, and yeah, I think the other part that was, somewhat tough was the rejection from suppliers.
mm.
You get the good wins
Yeah.
here and there. We were fortunate to get, two or three on in the very beginning, and then, probably had a string of 6 or 7 no's, and you're like, oh man, like what? Why do they not want to work with me? But you just have to, in your mind, you just got to keep pushing forward because, that stuff can really get you down, and it is hard to overcome. But, if you can, every day you get a little win. Hey, I got one yes today, or, I got one call back or one email back. That stuff starts to compound and definitely helps with your mental state too when you're trying to work through it. But yeah, those conversations are hard too, especially when you don't know what you're talking about. You're kind of just trying to get them on board any way you can. So
Yep. 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 Yeah, we all get them. I mean, even
yeah,
I get them. I was called a couple of suppliers the other day and got a no. And I've been
you'll
doing it for
bounce
nearly
back.
10 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's true. Yeah,
it always sucks.
yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay, and then so you got launched. And I think we were talking before the call. I think you mentioned sort of, you had started making some sales in your first month, right?
Yeah, we so yeah, around like our first month, we had gotten everything set up on Merchant Center, got our ads running, and yeah, we started pretty early on starting to make sales. So that was really, reassuring to hear in the beginning. Um, because that definitely, just gives you some little proof of concept. You're like, hey, all right, what I built is something that is actually attracting people. It's actually starting to generate some revenue. It's just super gratifying in the first month or two when
Mm.
you start seeing them come in.
Yeah, definitely. I think it changes. it changes things a lot, doesn't it? Like just the way you think about it, you're like, oh wow, actually strangers do buy things from me without
Yeah.
knowing who I
Without
am,
talking to
and
me. Yeah.
without talking to. Like I was sitting here the other day, and I've got a newish business, and I think some lady ordered like, I don't know, it's like a $9,000 order or something. I think it had 4 products in it, and no customer contact whatsoever, right? And like this is selling stuff to dudes and stuff, and it was like this, I spoke to her a bit later on because I had to ask her a question about one of the products that she'd ordered, and she's like this old middle-aged woman. I'm like, you're not even in my target market. Like my
That's
website's very
crazy.
like dude orientated and all this
Yeah.
sort of thing. And I was like,
Yeah.
I was just like, had a moment there where I was like, wow, it's still really amazing that somebody's just like throwing down $9,000, like no contact, no nothing, and it's all like that shit still amazes me, even though you know, I've done it
I
a
know
lot
you.
of times now. I'm just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what?
Well, I always do, I kind of think of the analogy of like, okay, if I'm going to purchase a car, like it's such a long out sales process. But
Yeah,
literally
right.
this morning, I woke up to an $8,000 order, one product, and I've never talked to the guy once before. And I'm like, to your point, you're like, what the hell? Like, how is he just there? I guess, they find it and they like it and they don't need to talk to anyone. But yeah, I asked my partner, I was like, did you talk to this guy? And he's like, no, I've never talked to him before. And I was like, all right, well, that's great. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, yeah. Well, making sales while you sleep, that's the trick, right?
Yeah,
That's one of the
you
tricks
can't complain
to
when
building
you,
wealth.
yeah,
You
you
gotta be
wake
able to
up to
make money
the,
while you sleep.
yeah, you wake up to the
Nice.
Shopify notification on your phone, and it's a good way to start a Monday.
Yeah, awesome. So you got launched in April.
Yep.
Like I said, started making sales out of the gate, and kind of you've worked your way up to. We're recording this. If anyone's listening in sort of mid August, you hit 70,000 in sales in July. That's the last full month that's gone here, and that's a pretty good trajectory there. Is there anything when you think back on the last sort of 4 months or 4.5 months or whatever of that time, is there anything that you kind of think, we did particular things you worked on or particular things you've done in your market there that have sort of contributed to that? Because I think that's definitely we see students make sales in their first month and second month and so on and such forth. But I think probably you're having a faster start than some people do.
Hmm.
And there can be a lot of reasons for that, for sure. But is there anything that you can kind of, when you think about it, like there's something we've really worked on, or in as suits your niche at least, like maybe there's something you're doing in particular.
Yeah, I think two things that we do pretty well. The first being, we don't have a whole ton of products, not in the hundreds or thousands by any means, but we really did
Mm.
make it a point to, really optimize every product page and not so much, all the little nooks and crannies, but putting really good pictures, really good descriptions, adding sections at the bottom of the product page that were kind of showing more lifestyle and custom stuff that we were kind of writing. And that's something that we didn't really see a lot of the competitors in the space doing. So when you think about like how do you stand out, that was one of them. And I'd say
Mm.
another thing that has helped a ton is really being attentive to anyone that's calling in or emailing in. I try to check it every few hours during the day. And obviously, if a call comes in, picking it up and trying to push it along the process if they have questions or if they're looking for pricing or a discount or whatever they're really looking for. Just trying to continue to move them down the funnel, asking them questions about what type of product, what price point are they at? You know, are you new to the space? Are you more like an advanced person in, our niche? Cause we're in, a similar, I would say it's a hobby. So there are different levels of,
Mm-hmm.
beginner up to advanced. So that does depend on what product we're trying to, push on our end too. So, But yeah, I would just say, answering every call, following up if we don't hear back. That's really been a huge push. And we'll even get people say like, yeah, wow, your customer service is amazing. Like I called, your supplier of this product and they don't even answer the phone, which blows my
Oh,
mind.
really?
But yeah, I
Nice.
can't complain. Yeah. I'm like, hey, that's good. That's great. And yeah, even sometimes when I have questions for our suppliers, I'll call and they'll just ring. And you're like, all right, well, that, if I can't even reach my own supplier, it's going to be tough for the customer too. So
It's amazing. I mean, so like people talk to us all the time. We get a question all the time, like, what's the difference between people who are successful and who aren't successful at dropshipping and high ticket dropshipping, that sort of thing. And it's always like there's no secrets, right? People who are successful just tend to do the day to day stuff incredibly consistently and do it well, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
just it's just like a list of, and me and Ben did this at our last live event. We just had like a list of things that you like do the work. We called the section, and those are actually coming out. We're talking about them on the podcast, which will come out
Oh, cool.
sometime after this does. But one of them is just like answer the phone, like literally.
Yeah,
If you answer every phone call and like actually show some interest in your customer and like ask them some questions, like you're talking about, and you do that more than everybody else or better than everybody else, then you're going to make more sales. And it
yeah,
sounds so
100%.
incredibly simple to say, but not everybody does it still
Yeah,
in 2023.
yeah, I know. And that, yeah, I guess like when I think about some other hurdles in the beginning, that was definitely one for me. And like when I would see the phone ring, I was like, I don't know if I can answer it because you get in your
Yeah,
mind
right.
that you're like, oh, I don't know enough about my niche, or I don't know enough about my products, or if I don't sound confident, they're not going to buy from me. But yeah, that one is definitely, that was something I struggled with in the beginning for sure. But um, as you're in your business more, you're talking to more and more people, then you get a lot more comfortable with it, and you feel like you are kind of an expert in the space. So
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, cool. Yeah, I think definitely the other one that sometimes you can get a bit worried about is like, oh, I want to answer the call because it might be like a refund request or something like that. And it's
yeah,
kind of like if I just ignore that, it won't happen.
yeah, I know. It's like, all right, well, if you ignore it, it's only going to get way worse.
Well,
And
that's
then
right.
you're gonna,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're getting a charge back, and you're like, what the hell? I didn't even know this was. Yeah, I know that they're not fun. Those are not fun calls because we have had a few defects or replacements, and you're just like, I really don't want to deal with that. But you get
Hmm.
that one person who you don't handle it correctly, and then they could write a bad review, or word of mouth is super powerful too, especially when you're in a niche where it's pretty tight knit. So just
Yep.
one bad person could really set you down. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now you mentioned that you're running your business with a business partner.
correct. Yeah.
Um, yeah. How did that come about for you?
Yeah. So, yeah, my partner, I'm in Chicago. He's actually based in Boston, but we have been lifelong friends since about third grade. Grew up together, went to college together, and have always just been, pretty entrepreneurial in spirit. Always just tossing around ideas. He started up a
Yeah.
company back in college and didn't really take off like everyone hoped, but just fun stuff like that. Just always trying to think of new things to do. Um, so yeah, I remember I was up at his lake house when I started listening to this podcast, and we were in the car, and I was just kind of explaining the whole model. I felt like I knew it really well, and he had never even heard of it before. So then, as time went on, we kind of just go back and forth. Hey, what do you think about this type of product, or how could we do it this way? And then, yeah, when I started the course, I was about a month or two in, and I said, "Hey, do you want to, help me launch this?" And I think if we could do it together, it could really, take off a lot quicker. So that's kind of how it went about. But yeah, it's been a
Hmm.
very good
Cool.
partnership so far, so I can't complain.
Yeah, well, what's contributed to it being a good partnership, do you think? Like, if you think about it and maybe separate out the fact that you guys are, as you mentioned, like lifelong friends, like
Yeah.
are there particular maybe practices that you have, or just ways that you operate side by side, because you're 50-50, I think you
Yeah.
mentioned. And so is
Yeah.
there anything in particular you can sort of, because once again, this is something that I think a lot of people out there think about is, oh, maybe it would be easier if I do this with a business partner, or I know somebody in my life who might be into this. And obviously I think you can at the same time hear a lot of stories out there about partnerships that didn't go well. And certainly me and Ben have talked about that sort of thing on the podcast before, because we both had experiences where things didn't work out in an ideal way. So I'm just curious
Yeah.
if you've got
Yeah.
any tips or anything that springs to mind that sort of has helped thus far in your 4.5 months in business, that have kind of are helping you to work well together.
Yeah, I'd say two things that kind of go together. One was, obviously in the beginning when you're getting everything set up, it's kind of easy to, both be doing stuff at the same time. Let's say building the website or uploading products. We were both kind of doing that. After we did launch, we really made it clear, like, hey, this is stuff that I'm going to handle. This is stuff that you're going to handle. Obviously, things overlap. So it is tough sometimes, but for the most part, we have, our main duties. He's a lot more on the, customer facing side, everything, before the sale, handling inbound emails, giving discounts or, promos to people that are, just trying to get over the edge. And then I'm more on the back end of the sale. So doing all the financials, placing the orders with our suppliers. If anyone needs like an order update, I'll handle that. So that's kind of how we've separated it out. And obviously it's tough in the beginning, but that's kind of, and on top of that, he has a good sales background. He talks to people all the time on the
Sure.
phone, Zoom calls, stuff like that. So I felt when we started the partnership, hey, you can do all that. That's more like the customer facing stuff, and I can handle everything on, the back end after the sale has been closed. So yeah, so I think just really just like setting those boundaries when the time is right and sticking to it. Obviously, things can change. If we start hiring out a team of VAs or customer service people, then the roles are going to have to change a little bit.
Yep.
But there's plenty of stuff to do even once
Yeah.
you launch. So it's a never. I'm on that mastermind with Rob and Jade and Sharon, Holly, Nathan, and yeah, it's really good to like be accountable. But every week we talk and we're saying, geez, our list keeps growing, and I check things off every week, but it seems like it's a never ending list of stuff to do. So, yeah, I even if we do hire a team in the future, there'll be tons of opportunities to kind of restructure how we work together. So,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, for sure. Sure. All right, cool, man. Cool. So what are you excited for? What's coming up? What are you working on? Like what's going to take, I mean, you made a great start, and so you've got the potential, man. What's the plan?
yeah, um, working a lot on SEO stuff right now, getting our on page dialed in, and then kind of moving into the content side of things. We're pretty much in a one product type of store, so I'd like to start exploring some newer
Mm.
options and stuff around our industry and our niche that could kind of be complementary, and branch out into that. um, but yeah, really SEO has been the main kind of driver right now, so trying to get that up and running. Hopefully in the next 4 to 6 months we'll start seeing some good conversions and good traffic off of that. But yeah, because I'd like to move away from Google completely. I
Yeah.
don't want to give them any more of my money. They've taken enough. They've given us a lot of good results, but
Yeah,
when you
you're
when you
making
look
money.
at
You're making money.
yeah, yeah, when you run the financials and you're like, holy crap, that's how much I spent on ads this month. You're like, all right, that's got to change. So, but they do. I mean, obviously it's the best route to go in the beginning when you don't have anything or any traffic. So
Yeah, cool. No, dude. Well, imagine you were talking to somebody who's listening to this podcast, which you are, as it so happens.
that's crazy.
Who's maybe like yourself, like you were maybe going back sort of going back maybe 6 months or more, when you were sort of listening to the podcast and you were like, yeah, I mean, this sounds like a good idea, but I'm still just hanging out. I'm maybe a bit on the fence, not quite sure if it's the thing to me. What would you say to somebody who was in that, who's right there, right where you were now, with the benefit of where you've come to thus far?
Yeah, I would say honestly, the main thing is you just have to start. That's the only way you're gonna, get anywhere in the process. So if you're on the fence, obviously you can continue to listen to the podcast and get into the free Facebook groups and kind of see and, feel out how it is. But it's gotta be an internal thing where you really feel like, hey, I do believe in myself. Obviously me and anyone else are just the average, Joe Schmo. So people can do it. It's just you really have to have that kind of internal drive where, hey, if I get this course, I'm gonna, work on it X amount of hours every day or every week. Not to say that you have to launch super fast, but it just has to be, consistent. You just have to believe that, you can actually do something that hundreds of people have already done. So that's kind of the biggest thing for me. And, anyone that's kind of in that position, just to believe in yourself.
Yeah. Awesome. And then finally, I mean, bit of a selfish plug here. Obviously, you took the Dropship Breakthru course. What are your thoughts on that? What's your experience been there? And once again, if there's somebody out there who's listening who might be interested in jumping in and taking the program, what difference has it made for you?
Yeah, I think it's made all the difference, honestly. Um, I watched a lot of YouTube videos and listened to the podcast and felt like, oh, I could probably do this without, hopping into the course. But when you get in there, you really see how much knowledge and, walkthroughs and videos and guides and worksheets. And, obviously you have the elite group and the private Facebook group. Like everything really just comes together once you're in there. And I think it'd be super hard to try to piece all the puzzle pieces together without having that structure of the course, to really, walk through step by step. This is how I set up my business. This is how I set up the website. This is exactly how you call suppliers. That part of it, the structure to me is really what I felt like I needed to get started and to keep going. So that was a big driver, in the beginning. And yeah, I mean, the community has been great. And, like I said, I'm in a mastermind group with a few other Dropship Breakthru people. So that's been a huge, huge help to kind of keep you on track. And yeah, just, all the groups that, you can ask a question any time of the day and, within an hour or two, someone's responding to you or pointing you in the right direction of someone who may have the answer. That's been a huge part for me too. That's just been incredibly helpful. So.
Awesome. Yeah, it's super cool to hear that you're in that mastermind group, because a couple of those guys have been on the podcast too now, Jake.
Yeah, I know.
And Rob,
it's awesome.
If you're listening in, you can go back and hear their stories as well. They're also both doing had a really great start to their dropshipping experience, and some of the other guys in that group are doing well as also. So that's yeah, I mean that's a massive thing. I think that was one of the things that I really like. It was a lot harder to find that community back when I started, and I think these days there's options out there now that you can kind of hang out with people who are going through the same stuff and having the same experience as you, and learn from them and share ideas and do all that sort of stuff. I think that's and that stuff. I mean, your group, that's not even something we did. That all just started kind of organically from people being in in the program, which
shout out to Rob.
That's so good. Yeah, Rob's the man, student of the year at our recent live event. Rob's awesome.
That's awesome.
But, yeah.
If you can, when you start, obviously to your point, it can be lonely and you feel like you don't know what you're doing. So if you can even just get a group of people together like that are at your same stage, maybe you're just starting the website or just starting to call suppliers, you're all going through those same struggles. So everyone's in the same boat, and it's just really refreshing to hear, okay, I had a bad week and someone else had a bad week too. Like, it comes and goes. So everyone's dealing with the same stuff. So
awesome. Well, Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show and share a bit about your story, where you've been, what you've been doing, etc. I think you've made a fantastic start. So I'm super pumped to have this conversation again in 12 months' time. I can't wait to see where you've got to with it. But thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And hopefully, when we get to the 5 million mark, we can come back on and talk about where we were today. So it's been a good time. Thanks again.
Yeah, awesome. Well, if you're listening in and you're sitting on the fence, or you'd like to make a start like Ben, come and join him in Dropship Breakthru. All you have to do is head to dropshipbreakthru.com/join, and you can get right in there.
Thanks for listening to the Dropship Podcast. You can find all the show notes for this episode at dropshippodcast.com. And if you're ready to take the next step in your dropshipping journey, we invite you to join us inside Dropship Breakthru, where John and I will walk you through step by step in starting your own high-ticket dropshipping e-commerce business. But that's not all. Dropship Breakthru will also teach you everything you'll need to know to grow your business and take it to the next level. So head over to dropshipbreakthru.com and sign up for our free training that will help you take the first steps towards building and growing your own profitable high-ticket dropshipping business.